So coming up for day 2, we are starting off in Asia with the latest news from Inside Asian Gaming. Yesterday, Andrew and Ben talked us through how Macau is recovering from COVID, the future of junkets and Japan. And we'll be connecting with them in a moment to find out what's been happening in the market overnight. Today, we'll also tackle some of the issues that will be under discussions in meetings around the show, including affordability, which is particularly thorny, but an increasingly important debate, particularly in Great Britain. You're also going to hear of the technology that will shape the industry of tomorrow, with YouGov presenting the results of IGB's Tech Futures Survey. We also have some big names in the studio for you today. Let's look at the agenda. We have Jordan Levin of OpenBet and Matt Davey of TechOrp. And if that wasn't enough, we've got headlines from the US and Latin America, some trips around the show, and even a sneak peek at what you can expect from Clarion Gaming for the rest of the year. There's even a special on Brazil and Argentina, 2 of the most highly anticipated markets. Now, just as our day gets going, things are drawing to a close in Asia. And I'm delighted to welcome back Andrew Scott and Ben Blaschke of Inside Asian Gaming for another update on the market. Very shortly, they'll be joining us via video link from Australia and Macau. And here they are, patching into us now. Hello to you both. I can see you on my monitors down here, so I'm going to talk to you here, and shortly you'll be behind me as well. How are you both today?
Well, thank you. Good morning, Katie, or your morning, our afternoon.
Yeah, what time is it over there?
Just a little after 4 p.m. for me, so just really lunchtime. Ben's a bit later.
Yeah, just after 6 p.m. for me, Katie.
Oh, okay. So it's a reasonable time. That's good news. We're not asking you to get up in the middle of the night or anything like that. That's good.
Oh, we would have done that for you, Katie.
Oh, you flattering me. Thank you. So tell us about the headlines. What's been happening overnight?
Well, overnight, I mean, Ben, we did breakfast briefing this morning. Delta and Phil Webb, and there was that Morgan Stanley thing, wasn't there?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that, one of the ongoing issues, and we did touch on it again briefly this morning, has been the Macau gaming law. It's probably the biggest issue across Asia at the moment, are amendments to the gaming law that are going to affect the retendering for Macau's gaming licenses. I mean, Andrew, maybe you can elaborate a little bit on what's been happening in Macau in respect to the gaming law there.
I can certainly elaborate on that, given that I've just finished writing a 14-part series on the damn thing. 12,000 words. I've got 20,000 page views over the last 5 weeks. So the new Macau gaming law is the first time they've revised the law in 20 years. And this is coinciding with the end of the 6 concessions, which were due to end on 26th of June, but have been extended to the 31st of December. So there was a public consultation process in September and October last year. And right now, the new Macau gaming law is going through the Legislative Assembly of Macau as we speak. And they've promised to pass it by June in time for a public tender process in the 3rd quarter of this year, just in time to make it, to negotiate contracts with the successful bidders of that public tender process, probably in the last quarter, get those contracts signed just in time for the new concessions, and they will be 10-year concessions this time, not 20-year concessions, for them to begin on January 1 next year. And there are many, many points. We don't have time today to go through them, but if anyone's interested, please do head on over to Inside Asian Gaming's website and read that series, because there's a lot of issues there in terms of reversion of gaming areas to the Macau government, chip caps, issues with the taxation rates, a uniquely Macau concept called the managing director, and a whole bunch of things. So that's one of the biggest sort of issues going on in Asia at the moment, with certainly in the land-based industry, in the world's biggest casino gaming hub.
And has there been anything else interesting in the headlines you'd like to discuss?
Well, I think, Ben, what about the Morgan Stanley thing that happened overnight?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably 2 things. I mean, first of all, we can talk about, there was a report by Morgan Stanley overnight. Of course, we're just coming into results season in Macau, so all the concessionaires, all the operators around Asia were releasing their 1st quarter results very shortly. Morgan Stanley released a report on the Macau 6 concessionaires, suggesting that EBITDA is likely to be in the realm of, what was it, around negative $100 million US for the quarter combined, with at least 3 of those concessionaires expected to report an EBITDA loss for the quarter. So things in Macau, as you say, Andrew, is still a little bit dire. The other big thing, which is an ongoing issue, also, I'm sure your viewers might have heard a bit, Katie, about this in Australia at the moment, is a lot happening in the regulation of Australia's 2 largest operators, Crown Resorts and Star Entertainment Group. There's been ongoing stories for a couple of years now. Late 2019, there were a couple of media reports about Crown Resorts and what was going on inside, particularly their Melbourne casino, Crown Melbourne. Since then, there have been royal commissions into Crown Melbourne, into Crown Perth, and an inquiry in New South Wales into the not yet open, in terms of gaming anyway, Crown Sydney. Crown Resorts have been found unsuitable to hold a gaming licence in all 3 cases. However, they've been given 2 years to fix that in Melbourne and in Western Australia, and they look like they will open in Crown Sydney soon. But there's been lots of talk about, I should mention too, there's an ongoing inquiry now of a very similar nature into Star Entertainment Group, which runs casinos in New South Wales and the Gold Coast. So what we're looking at is a situation where there's been allegations, there's been proven during these inquiries of a failure of both operators to oversee, properly oversee junket operations. Their relationship with Asian junkets has come into question. Suggestions of links to organised crime facilitating money laundering. So it's pretty serious allegations facing these operators. And what we're looking at the moment, we think, is basically a complete overhaul of the casino industry in Australia. There's even talk that some licences may be rescinded in the future. There's questions being asked, does Australia need a casino industry? I mean, we would argue, of course it does. Better to have a legalised one than to not have one at all. However, a lot to play out at the moment. So an inquiry currently going underway in New South Wales into Star Entertainment Group. And I think that there will be lots of headlines over the coming weeks as that plays out.
Absolutely. And Andrew, with Macau amending its gaming laws and the apologies, just clearing my throat. I'll begin again. With Macau amending its gaming laws and the retendering for licenses, what is being expected of operators?
Well, corporate social responsibility is a big thing over here. In fact, there is 4% paid, 4% of GGR is paid into 2 separate funds in Macau. One is specifically managed by an organisation called the Macau Foundation that basically does CSR around Macau. The others are one to promote tourism and so forth. That's been going on for 20 years, but the difference now is that they're enshrining in this new Macau gaming law specific requirements for the 6 concessionaires, and it will be 6 again, we already know that, to do additional CSR on top of that 4%. In a range of different areas, supporting labour, supporting disabled people, various social initiatives in Macau, that sort of thing. So that's one big area. There's also a reduction in the gaming industry in Macau. You can see that the Chinese government wants a certain level of control over the gaming industry in Macau, and there are just a few things put in place that are going to make the industry potentially a little less lucrative than it was before. We've obviously lost the junket industry, which we talked about yesterday. A little bit more control for this thing that's called the managing director, but it's a bit of a misnomer. Basically, it's a local Macau person, has to have, was 10%, now going to be 15%. Equity in each concessionaire, but then again, there's some tricks around that equity. It doesn't necessarily have to be a beneficial ownership. So there's a few of the things that are going to change. They're quite a sort of an overarching change in the industry, and I think it's going to be a few years before we can get back to the glory days of where we were. Well, certainly in 2013, but even in 2018, 2019, Macau industry was extremely profitable, and it'd be great to get back to those days, but I don't think we're going to be there for another few years yet.
And do you think one of those changes could be the look and feel of Macau's casinos? Do you think that?
Well, no, not really. But I think Macau is I won't say completely built out, but it is substantially built out. So when the industry was liberalised in 2001, 2002, the first sort of international operator opened in 2004. They all built on the Macau Peninsula. And then later on, then they all moved to Cotai over the other side of the water and built large integrated resorts, sort of in the order of $2, $3, $4 billion US each integrated resorts. And some of those resorts have since had phase twos, even a phase three about to open for Galaxy. So most of it is already planned. A lot of it's already built out. There certainly is more to come, but I think the theme and the overall look and feel of most of these properties is well and truly established. And I think it'll be a little bit of more of the same. I think one of the issues around that is the reduction in the concession length from 20 years to 10 years makes it a lot harder to do very large capital investment because you've got half the time to get your money back. And remembering before this 20-year period, which is just finishing now, it was actually 40 years. The two previous periods before that were 40 years. So in the last 3 times, we've gone down from 40 to 20 to 10. So you can see the pattern there. And of course, you know, it's hard to invest $4, $5, $6, $7 billion US capex if you've only got 10 years to get your money back.
And over to you, Ben. Inquiries into Australia's casino operators, Crown and Star, are ongoing, and some of the criticism from regulators has been brutal. Can you give us a bit of an explainer on this process and what comes next?
I mean, actually, one of the heavy criticisms, aside from the criticisms on Star and Crown, has been around the regulators themselves. There's been, the regulators in New South Wales, Victoria and Western Australia have copped a hammering. In fact, I was just reading through the other day the Western Australian Royal Commission report, and they really went to town on the regulator itself, a failure to provide proper oversight. Some of this comes down to government funding as well, just a lack of resources. So I think what we're going to see, and it's already started in New South Wales and Victoria, is not only an overhaul of, or an expectation that the casino operators themselves will overhaul themselves, but also an overhaul of regulation. We've seen Victoria, there's been a new specific casino regulator formed, probably going to be exactly the same thing happen in New South Wales, probably in Western Australia, because a lot of the criticism is that resources have been funneled away to other areas. In New South Wales, the regulator has been liquor and gaming. It's the same in Victoria. And often what you find when it happens is a lot of the resources go towards liquor and you don't get the proper oversight of gaming. So we're going to see not only changes expected from the top of the casinos themselves, but we're going to see completely new regulators put in place with specific mandates to look for and look out for all the problems that have been occurring within these casinos. And that is, money laundering controls, responsible gambling controls, and issues like that.
And do either of you have any predictions of what you're expecting to come up in the headlines over the next few days? I'll come to you first, Andrew. Any predictions?
Well, I think we're getting into earnings seasons for the first quarter. So I think that everyone's eagerly awaiting, especially in the current environment with COVID and the differences in different jurisdictions and how that's playing out. Obviously very difficult for Macau operators, but the rest of Asia essentially opening up again now. For example, even just today, Phil Webb, which runs some gaming over in the Philippines, have returned to profit. And we're expecting to see Marina Bay Sands in Singapore, Resorts World Sentosa start sort of posting the kind of numbers that they used to post. Both very profitable properties over there, very lucrative for their operators. But Macau, all eyes are on Macau, really, because as Ben mentioned before, Morgan Stanley was predicting about 100 million EBITDA loss for the quarter, but that was split 3 and 3. Three companies due to lose about $1 billion and 3 companies due to make about $1 billion. This is EBITDA, this is not bottom line. Bottom line's obviously worse once you take off the other expenses. So these companies are burning through pretty substantial numbers, and it's quite unusual to say about Macau operators that they might be running out of money, but in fact, that's exactly what the latest news has been, that SJM, for example, was said by one of the analysts to only have enough money in the bank to last another 3 months. Now, of course, they're all borrowing money, but in terms of borrowing, the borrowing's gone from about $5 billion US to about 20 billion US dollars over the course of COVID in the last 2 years. That's a pretty incredible amount of borrowing, 15 billion US dollars these operators have borrowed. So I think the news in the next few days, or certainly in this next week or two, while we go into Q1 earnings season, is going to be all about the results, all about how these operators have done, and trying to use those results to predict what might happen in the quarters ahead.
Brilliant. Thank you, Andrew. And Ben, any predictions from you?
Look, I think there's a couple of things coming up. As Andrew said, the results are a big thing always at the end of a quarter. But I think looking at Japan, for example, the 28th of April this year is the deadline for bids to be submitted from the 3 locations that we know are going to bid, which is Osaka, Wakayama and Nagasaki. By the 28th of April, they have to submit their joint bids with their chosen operators to the government. So that will be a major step in this process for the first integrated resorts in Japan. And I think the other thing that's just been an interesting story to follow recently has been talk of Thailand considering introducing legalized casino gaming. Of course, there are plenty of underground casinos in Thailand, but in terms of legalized casino gaming, that's been in the news a little bit recently, and there are moves afoot to perhaps make that finally become a reality. Whether it becomes reality or not is open to debate, but I think that's an interesting story to follow at the moment, and there's a government committee discussing that as we speak. So they're probably the 2 main things I'm looking at over the coming weeks.
Okay, brilliant stuff. Thank you so much, both of you, Andrew and Ben, for your time. Enjoy your evenings in Australia and Macau.